Greetings. Welcome to Dr. English's Book Lovers Book Club. I'm Dr. English and I teach English. This week I'm going to review Dear Martin by Nic Stone. And just a reference, the Michael Brown murder in Ferguson, Missouri happened in 2014, and this book was published in 2017. I just want to acknowledge that particular event because I feel like that event really elicited several young adult novels. Next week, I'm going to review All American Boys by Jason Reynolds and Brendan Kiley. And I think there are several books that came out about that time. And I just want to acknowledge that and acknowledge Michael Brown and his family. In this story, Dear Martin, the main character's name is Justice, and he comments that it's Justice with a Y. And I like that because I chose to use an IE in my name, so and so I like that as a little quirk, and I think that's kind of a shout out to Nic Stone too, because she's using a nickname for herself as a writer and not her full name. So it's a minor thing, but I just wanted to acknowledge that I thought it was clever that not until the very end did he actually say something about how his name is spelled. And I've had a student named Justice, and he went by JD. But on a more serious note, one of the things that I appreciated about Nic Stone's novel, Dear Martin, is her use of multiple genres. I actually taught a class called Writing for Teachers, and that's one of the assignments I gave my pre-service teachers is a multi-genre. We did it as a whole class. One of my favorite moments in the classroom was a student who wrote, they picked the topic of banned books for their multi-genre piece as a whole class, and one of them did an erotica piece about banned books. It was pretty funny. It was PG, but it's just hilarious because she read it out loud and we laughed so hard. But anyway, I'm going on a little bird walk, as I tell my students. I'm getting off the beaten path here. But she uses just like a normal narration of Justice as the narrator, but then she utilizes the letters. He decided he wanted to had an incident, and like I said, I don't want to give spoilers if you haven't read the book, but he has an incident that really affects him traumatically, and as a way to deal with that, he decides to start writing to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So the letters are an important part of his own thinking, like to understand something about himself. And I love that, I love that kind of stylistic thing that she's done. But she also uses like scripts, like a play, especially when it's things that are really like things that I feel like she knows that Justice has to like be outside of it, is more omniscient. And so I like how that happened. For some readers, that might disrupt the narrative piece of it, but I feel like I understand why she did that, because those kinds of things are like really difficult. And then she includes like a news story, and she changes the font on that, and I like that kind of stylistic choice that gives the reader, it gives you a chance to like process what the narrator is saying, but then to see like, oh, here are these interjections. And I really like that because there has to be some distance, and I think she does a good job of doing that for Justice. And so in that regard, and like I said, for some readers that might be a little disruptive, but for me it made sense that she did that. So I really like that about it. And I think that she's, addressing a trauma for a lot of young Black men. And I feel like that, and I think that's true for several of the books that I'm going to do in the next couple weeks that address that trauma of what does it mean to be a young Black male in the United States of America. That's really the question, I think, that for me she's asking in this, and she's addressing that through Justice. And it's just, there's some scenes in this book that are very heartbreaking. And it's almost like that can't be happening, and I'm, as a retired white person who was a teacher, it's like I don't have the experience. I can't fathom it, to be honest. And it enrages me, but I feel like I couldn't really, I wouldn't be very effective because I couldn't say, I know how it is. I have no idea. And so for those who are reading it who don't have that experience, it's like, you just need to acknowledge it. And here I am talking about it. But I feel like, in all honesty, I can't fathom the feelings, but I appreciate Nic Stone for helping me try to understand through what she's written. I really am grateful for that, because otherwise I have no means of understanding emotionally or psychologically what a young Black adolescent male goes through. And Justice is a kid who's, brilliant, and so even, it doesn't matter. The point was, like, it doesn't matter if you're brilliant, if you're going to go to an Ivy League school. It doesn't matter. If you are a Black young man in this country, you have to be very careful. And I think about that. I think about my own family and my great nephews, and it really, it gives me pause and makes me really stop and think about, what is their future going to be like. So I think that, like I said, what I like about it is the different kinds of genre she mixes in there for particular reasons as the writer, conveying the story and what's happening. And also, it also helps us to see, like, one of the characters that I really did not like is Jared. But even with Jared, there's a turn. And so I didn't think it would happen, but but I really feel like she did such an incredible job of putting out there, like, things I have actually heard people say through Jared's character. And it's jarring, sometimes it's just like, yeah, it's so upsetting, but it's jarring because you realize, oh, I've heard that before. And I love that her candor about that she doesn't hold back any punches. She tells it like it is through those characters and how their attitudes, and it's really upsetting. The other thing I think that was really subtle that I liked, because I like subtleties. I talk about subtleties and nuances a lot, but one of the things that I think is a real subtlety is that because it's such an intense book about the particular, social justice for a young Black male, to put in this sub story of SJ, I love that, because it's like in a Shakespeare play, you need to have some comedic relief. And it's not really comedic, but it's just like you have some emotional relief in those intense moments. And that is what I think she's doing with SJ's character. Is like, we need some downtime as a reader, because you can become so emotionally involved and enraged that you just like, there's got to be something good. And there is. I mean, it's all good, but I really appreciated that subtlety that she added, that storyline with SJ, because it's just like a little rom-com in this midst of this, really traumatic experiences of justice. And I, of course, love Doc because, I'm a Dr. English myself. And so I appreciated that, character in the story, and how supportive he was of justice and all of his students. So it made me really happy to read that character. So thank you for that, Nic Stone. I am going to talk a little bit, I'm going to read this first, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about teaching this. So here's my excerpt that I'm going to share. This is his last letter to Martin in the book. Martin, it never ends, does it? No matter what I do for the rest of my life, I'm going to find myself in situations like this, aren't I? It's exactly what Mr. Julian told Manny and me, but there's a part of me that still doesn't want to believe it. And all right, benefit of the doubt, maybe I'm making this a race thing when it's not. I'll admit my filter's a little tainted after the past 8 months. Scratch that, after the past year. But that's the thing, Martin. I can't not notice when someone is eyeing me like I'm less than. And at this point, my mind automatically goes to race. No clue what to do about that. Which brings me back to my original point. What was my goal with the be like Martin thing? Was I trying to get more respect? Fail. Was I trying to be more acceptable? Fail. Did I think it would keep me out of trouble? Epic fail. Really, what was the purpose? What I do know, I just went from being one of 3 Black students in a class of 82 to one of, well, very, very few in a much larger number. Yeah, Garrett Tyson is gone, but like Mr. Julian said, the world is full of people who would always see me as inferior. Rumi Roosevelt just proved that. I keep coming back to something Doc said during Thuggate. If nothing ever changes, what type of man am I going to be? chewing on that for over the past few days, I've started to wonder if maybe my experiment failed because I was thinking the wrong damn question. Every challenge I face, it's been, what would Martin do? And I can never come up with a real answer. But if I go with Doc's thinking, who would Martin be? Well, that's easy. Just you'd be yourself. The eminent MLK, nonviolent, not easily discouraged, and firm in your belief. Finally, I talk a little bit about if I would teach this as a secondary language arts teacher. And I definitely think there are some things that might be a little intense for 9th and 10th graders, but 11th and 12th graders, there's probably 9th graders. This is a reading level that 9th and 10th graders could, you could teach this with them, but it's probably one of the top banned books. And I would say if you, depending on where you teach it, you're going to get some pushback on this book. But as far as understanding, try to have empathy, to teach empathy, or, for others in a social justice framework, it's really a great book. And so I guess it's just upsetting to me that people would want to ban this, because it's just, is it too difficult for you to with your feelings about it? Yeah, I have those too, but, I think we need to have those moments where we can see from other people's perspectives. So, but yes, of course, I think it could definitely be a supplemental book club book, a supplemental in your library for sure, and to give to students to read. And you could do it as a novel panel or a literature circle. Students would have really great conversations around this book. So, and like I said, 9th and 10th grade could probably handle it, but I think you probably, just because there's some language but the violence isn't explicit. So, but some people are just uncomfortable with trying to understand other people's point of view. So, so that's it for this week. I thank you for joining me. And next week, I'll be doing All American Boys. And I look forward to talking a little bit about this book. So thank you for joining me. I'll see you next time. Bye.